Hello and welcome to this series of brief video interviews run by the Multifaith Chaplaincy. My name is Sophie. I'm the Chaplaincy Assistant at the University of Bristol Multifaith Chaplaincy. Bristol is a city overflowing with diverse cultures and religious traditions, and the same is true of the university community. In this series of video interviews, I will be talking with different members of the university community to find out about their experiences of faith and life on campus and beyond. Thank you for joining. For today's episode, I'm pleased to welcome Shauna Hope. Shauna is a counsellor at the university's counselling service and has over 20 years of experience as a counsellor. Welcome, Shauna.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. Just before we start, I just want to have a quick disclaimer that my next door neighbours are doing building work today. So if you hear any noise in the background, sorry about that in advance. So Shauna, my first question for you is, do you just want to explain how you ended up at the university and what you were doing before that?
Yeah, sure. So I was working for a mental health charity as a helpline coordinator. And I'd worked there for about 6 years and really enjoyed working there, but kind of felt it was probably time for a change. And a friend of mine who worked for the university saw a post for a counsellor that said it was with a responsibility for equality and diversity. So that kind of, well, at the time it was equality and diversity, I think, and then became also inclusion. And that really interested me. So it was that bit really. I think I'd been a counsellor by that point for about 10 years already. But it was the sort of EDI thing that brought me in or brought it to my attention anyway. Yeah.
And just remind me, when did you join the university? I can't quite remember.
Yeah, that's a good point. When was it? It was 2012. Yeah, because it was the year of the Olympics.
Okay. Oh, amazing.
Yeah, in London.
Good time to join. And can you talk to me about your responsibilities? What are your main responsibilities as a counsellor?
So in fact, my main responsibility, they have changed over the years, but so initially there was, because the wellbeing service has developed as well over the years. So initially it involved workshops as well, but predominantly my responsibility is offering one-to-one support, counselling and group support. So counselling predominantly. Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of one-to-one with students. And is it it's just students or staff as well?
Just students, okay. Yeah.
Great. And I wonder if you could talk a bit about why you wanted to become a counsellor.
So when the first training I did, or when I went to university, I did sociology and it included social work. So I had a social work qualification. And I guess I used that in quite a general way to do sort of community development work. And I think when I first came to Bristol, I was working for a women's aid organisation and got into learning about counselling skills because there was a lot of individual support in that. But I think where the challenge was, there was also housing management. So you kind of were offering support, but also having to check people were following the rules, keeping the house, the refuge safe, that kind of thing. So it was a little bit torn, I guess, in terms of the support being a little bit pulled, really, that you could offer support, but you also had to fit that people were following the rules. So I think the bit that was probably really appealing about counselling was the opportunity. There's not many jobs where you can offer support without having an agenda of what you need. And I think counselling probably gets as near as there is to one, really, which it is quite a freeing space, which is lovely.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. Also, I didn't know that you did a sociology degree. That's
a long time ago, Sophie.
Well, I'm a fellow sociology undergraduate, or graduate now. Actually, I don't know, but yeah. So, Shauna, we know each other through the chaplaincy. Obviously, I've been to a number of staff meditation sessions with you. I wonder if you could talk a bit about your spiritual practice in general, but then also how it kind of influences and shapes your role as a counsellor.
So I guess my sort of practice started, now when was that? 2007, that I started just going to a fairly informal Buddhist group and doing meditation there. And also actually at the same time, my son was singing he was little and sang in the choir at St Mary Redcliffe. So there was a kind of a two-prong experience of spirituality. But in a sense, what I liked from both of them, even though they were very different, was just having a space to be still in the week. It was a difficult time for me, and just having that sort of regularity, I think, was quite useful. And space, and space, peace, and the sort of irregularity, I guess. So that's kind of what set it off. And I suppose even at the beginning, it was always interesting to me how similar it seemed to counselling, actually, because there's a lot about, what's resonating with me? What is it that makes sense for me? Whether that's a lot of the time it's not in my head, it's kind of in my body more, not trying to make sense so much, but sort of stepping out a little bit and, does that feel true? Now in counselling, there's an awful lot about congruence, being, if you sort of putting on the role of a counsellor, then most people won't feel that they can trust you, really. So that kind of feels like that really crosses over both, that congruence. And I think sometimes, particularly if it's an anxious time, it's a busy time, you can accidentally fall into getting faster and faster. And I think where I find that the meditation is really useful is it just brings back that stillness. And it's in the stillness really that it's most helpful, I think, when you're offering counselling.
I think that's interesting. Of my experience of using counselling services, I've definitely benefited from having a counsellor that is really grounded and still and peaceful, when as a user I've not felt that. And I think it's really important to have that quality. And obviously not all counsellors are involved with any sort of spiritual practice, but be interesting looking at the kind of relationship in general between the two.
Yeah, and I guess there's just that whole theme of relationships really crosses over counselling and spirituality, really, in terms of relating to nature, relating to other people, relating to the world. That just physically feeling the breeze on your face. There's a lot about connection in different ways.
And actually, kind of moving on with that, you've just mentioned nature. My next question is about kind of COVID-19 and the lockdown and how it's affected your home life and your work life. And I know that kind of being in nature has been a really significant part of that for you. So I wonder, can you talk about that?
Well, I guess for me, I've been really lucky in that I've had a back garden. That I think is quite a luxury in these times, really. But I think when you live in the city, as everyone who's probably watching this does, you can get that sense of feeling very packed in, particularly around COVID, where, initially with COVID, lots of places were shut down near to where I was. So there was an awful lot of people packed into the parks. And sometimes it was just about kind of trying to find the space that's already there, almost like that pocket space. So that for me might have been, Bristol's great, it's got hills. So there's a park nearby that's a bit smaller than the main park where lots of people go, but was on a great big hill. And so I would find that I would often climb that hill and then look out over the city. Sometimes maybe in the evening as well, when it was very quiet, kind of looking out the skylight at the top of the house, and just a sense of space. But also just in the garden, suddenly I was noticing birds that I hadn't seen before. And I was sitting with my husband. He said, well, how have you not seen this? All these birds that were coming into the bird bath. And I realised, well, I would have been walking home at this point. It was quite a key time when there was just an awful lot of birds on the patio, really. But I also just cycling and and anything around the water. So even if I wasn't able to get out to the seaside, actually seeing the river in Bristol along the docks and knowing that goes out to sea psychologically felt good too. I'm not sure whether I answered the question.
Well, I mean, kind of. And what about your as a counsellor, your work? Have you kind of moved everything online, or how's that?
Right, yes. So what the impact of COVID for me and my work is, so all the counsellors, first of all, we started doing it over the telephone,
Right.
and then we got some laptops and did it online. Yeah. So
with video call.
Yeah.
And do you find video call, it's been working well, or have there kind of been any good things or bad things that have come out of it?
So both, really. I think sometimes it can feel so connecting over video that you forget that you haven't actually met someone in person. And it's convenient sometimes. The downside is for people that sometimes they don't have such a private space, so if they could come in, it feels sometimes a bit more confidential, being able to leave, you don't necessarily have to tell your flatmates to stay out of your room. Sometimes what works quite well is people like to go outside, they might go out into the park, find a private space and do a phone call. I mean, for me, obviously, in some ways it's quite convenient, but in other ways I miss the walk to work and very much miss seeing my colleagues. So it is pluses and minuses. I would say it's probably a little bit more minus than plus, but it's been simpler than I think, really. You can still make that connection. It's just different. And I think that's probably a bit of a theme for COVID. You can still have relationships with people in general, still do things, but it's often different to how it would normally be. And sometimes, it definitely feels more restrictive and simpler, but still can work.
And I think it's amazing how people have made it work. I remember at the beginning, even the idea of furlough and like working from home, nobody thought it was possible and would work. And actually, a year down the line now, we've realised that it is possible and actually that good things can come out of it.
Because the counselling department service did experiment with offering phone calls for a while, and they were used a little bit, but they weren't that popular. So, but in fact, once everyone's doing it, it certainly has. There's been a lot of people using the counselling service, using the phone calls, using the online service, even though it's different.
Okay. And for my last question, there's been a big focus in lockdown around looking after our mental well-beings, and a question that I've asked our last two guests on the video series is, how do you practice self-care?
Well, one thing I did actually just recently was, I don't know whether you've heard of Insight Timer, but it's a free app that you can put on your phone. And the new year in January, they did this kind of challenge of meditate every day. And so that has become a bit of a luxury, that I wake up in the morning and get myself a cup of tea, listen to this meditation first of all. So I'm finding that I'm waking a bit earlier as a result. Having this cup of tea before I do a meditation. I mean, I do normally have a kind of a daily meditation, but it's nothing particularly complicated. But the other thing that I've had to do is kind of remind myself that I'm not walking to work anymore. I'm not cycling to work. So I can really tell the difference if I get out. I'm very lucky I live near some parks, but if I go out outside, even if it's briefly, before I actually sit down and start working. So that's really helpful. A few kind of key friends that I keep regular contact with, sometimes run around the docks with. And there's something about their regularity, I think is the word, that has been really helpful. And I guess for me, a big loss of COVID has been not seeing extended family. So I've missed seeing my brother and my sister and their family. But luckily my cousin and her family live nearby, so we've had we've had to use Zoom calls and things like that, but that's been quite helpful. I think certainly at the beginning there was a lot of anxiety, and there still is, it is hard, but particularly at the beginning around COVID. And I found that if I did feel that I was just getting a little bit, I'd seen far too much news or something like that, then actually I would sort of sometimes access what's called Dharma Seed. It's just lots and lots of talks. And there was a lovely speaker from New Zealand, I think called Jill Shepherd, I think her name is. And she's, funnily enough, she was stuck in Birmingham at the time. She couldn't get back to New Zealand. And she said, it might just be worth reminding yourself, I am all right at the moment. And that was quite helpful. Okay, at this moment, it's okay. Obviously, we can predict all sorts of things about the future, and that's often where anxiety is, isn't it? Trying to, oh, what if? But actually at the moment I'm okay. I think that, but a lot of, as I've said already, getting outside has been really, really, really vital, I think, in terms of my well-being.
Oh, that's such a lovely note to end on. And there's definitely something in discovering new green spaces and setting up new routines that I've also found really helpful. So I think that's about all we've got time for, but thank you so much for joining. I've really enjoyed kind of getting to know you a little bit more. And thank you so much for those who tuned into this video interview. If you want to find out more about the chaplaincy, you can visit our website or our Facebook page, which I will link to in the description below. And if you want to get in touch with me or any of the chaplaincy team, our details are also on the website. See you next time.